Horror movies are nothing if not a safe space for filmmakers to unleash their most bizarre, unhinged, and indeed deeply WTF ideas on audiences who will gratefully receive them. After all, horror has always been a breeding ground for the weird, the uncanny, and the extreme, in large part because horror fans are just so damn keen to embrace it all. Now, while modern horror fans are pretty damn tough to throw off or gross out, every so often a film can do something that makes everyone in the audience collectively go, "The hell did we just watch?" Obviously, massive spoiler alert in effect, okay? I'm Sean Ferrick for What Culture Horror, and here are 10 WTF moments from recent horror movies. Number 10, Tim and Millie become one together. While audiences might have assumed that Together's protagonists, Tim and Millie, might find a way to avoid being grotesquely fused together at the film's end, that's not at all what happens. Ultimately, the pair see no viable way to exist as separate entities while both still being allied, and so decide to accept their fate, slow dancing to the Spice Girls' anthemic "To Become One," as they willingly allow their bodies to quite literally become one. And then comes the final payoff, where Millie's parents arrive for a visit, only to be greeted by an androgynous-looking person who appears to be a complete fusion of Tim and Millie. In reality, of course, it's just Alison Brie with a wig and thick Dave Franco-esque eyebrows glued on. But it's an intriguingly uncanny payoff to a movie many likely assumed would end more triumphantly for the duo. As a climax to Together's general commentary on codependency, though, it's perfectly bizarre. Number 9. Tyler is the ghost, presence. Steven Soderbergh's Presence concludes with a mind-melting twist that makes audiences reconsider the entirety of the film. For most of the runtime, there's a fair assumption that the spectral entity whose perspective we follow is Nadia, the best friend of protagonist Chloe, who recently died of an apparent drug overdose. However, in the third act, we learn that Nadia was actually murdered by Ryan, a serial killer and friend of Chloe's brother, Tyler. More to the point, Ryan attempts to do the very same to Chloe, forcing the ghostly presence to aggressively try to wake a drugged Tyler. Tyler is eventually roused, heads upstairs, and stops Ryan by tackling him out of an upstairs window, killing both Ryan and himself in the process. But then comes the stunning final twist. As Chloe and her family are preparing to move out of the house, Chloe's mother, Rebecca, sees a reflection of Tyler in the mirror, confirming him to have been the presence all along. Effectively, the story is a closed loop where Tyler's death is what causes him to become the presence, and because the film states that ghosts exist outside of linear time, he was able to wake his physical self up in the past and save his sister's life. Trippy. Number 8. The musical montage, Sinners. Ryan Coogler's Sinners is nothing if not a blindingly bold feat of filmmaking. And its most impressive sequence is one that could have so easily fallen totally flat in lesser hands. When Sammy performs a mid-movie song inside Smoke and Stack's juke joint, narration points out that precious few musicians are gifted enough for their performances to pierce the veil between life and death, conjuring spirits from both the past and the future. And at that moment, Sammy is joined by a bevy of anachronistic musicians and artists, from an electric guitarist to a DJ to an African drummer to even a kabuki-style dancer. It's an utterly mesmerizing sequence that culminates in a vision of the juke joint burning down, surely nodding to the story's own incendiary finale. All in all, this scene could have gone so wrong with a different filmmaker, but rather than take the audience out of the movie, it only enhances its rich feel and atmosphere. Number 7. Oliver Chews a Knife, Bring Her Back. Danny and Michael Filippo's second feature, Bring Her Back, is definitely one for the sickos, but the most WTF of its many WTF moments? The damn knife chewing scene. Relatively early in the movie, Andy attempts to bond with Laura's fellow foster son, Oliver, by offering him a piece of chopped melon. Oliver takes the fruit, complete with the knife it's impaled on, but as Andy turns around to grab him a plate, he suddenly starts chewing on the knife with an intense ferocity, instantly cutting up the inside of his mouth, much to our and Andy's horror. Andy fights to stop Oliver injuring himself anymore, but the damage has already been done. The combination of nauseating sound design and uncompromising close-up glimpse of Oliver's mouth being cut, as well as the two superb performances in the scene, adds up to one of the most memorably queasy scenes in any horror movie ever. Number 6. Ray is a killer, I Know What You Did Last Summer. The latest I Know What You Did Last Summer gets dubious credit for doing the bold thing that most other legacy horror sequels never would. having one of the OG characters turn into a killer. The new movie's big twist is that Stevie isn't the only hook-wielding killer slashing up Southport, as she's also being helped by none other than Ray Bronson, played by a returning Freddie Prinze Jr. himself. After Ray apparently shoots Stevie dead, Ava notices Ray is wounded exactly where she earlier hit the fisherman, at which point Ray reveals that he has indeed been helping Stevie. Ray's motive? His frustration at the town of Southport erasing its bloody past for the sake of gentrification. His violent ways are an attempt to ensure that nobody forgets what happened decades earlier. It's staggeringly dopey stuff and not remotely convincing, but at least as swings and misses go, it's a pretty damn daring one. Unsurprisingly, it didn't help the film's general audience reception much, with franchise fans left fuming that a legacy character was ruined in such a way. Number 5. Eric isn't on death's list. Final destination, Bloodlines. After the death of protagonist Stephanie's uncle Howard, it's assumed that the next person in line for death's scythe will be Howard's firstborn son, Eric. And yet, in addition to miraculously surviving a fire at the tattoo parlor where he works, Eric's sister Julia is actually the next one to be killed. Brutally, one must add. If you know, you know. Amid the confusion, Eric's mother, Brenda, reveals that he was, in fact, the product of an affair and therefore not part of Howard's bloodline, meaning he was never on death's list to begin with. It's a genuinely smart and unexpected flipping of the script, even if the much-loved Eric sadly still perishes while trying to stop death from claiming his half-siblings, being impaled and crushed by a faulty MRI machine. Number 4. The new epilogue, Predator, Killer of Killers. The original cut of Predator, Killer of Killers ended with enough of a tantalizing tease, where Viking huntress Ursa is placed in suspended animation by the Predators and revealed to be stored alongside Naru, the protagonist from the last live-action Predator film, Prey. But roughly 6 weeks after the movie's release, an extended cut was released featuring a longer epilogue where we see that Ursa and Naru are in stasis alongside Dutch and Mike Harrigan, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny Glover respectively, the protagonists of the first 2 Predator movies. It's certainly a fascinating and unexpected outcome, both to update a picture's ending after release and then to finally pick back up with these characters again decades after we last saw them on screen. Though it remains to be seen if it'll lead to anything substantial, most likely supporting roles in an animated sequel, it's nevertheless a neat and genuinely surprising sliver of fan service. Number 3. Ooby Dooby, Dangerous Animals. Dangerous Animals certainly gets points for offering up one of the most hilariously bizarre, badass final lines before the embattled final girl kills the murderous antagonist. Early in the film, protagonist Zephyr and her hookup Moses have a cute back and forth about the merits of Creedence Clearwater Revival song Ooby Dooby, with Zephyr mocking Moses for choosing to play it instead of their bona fide classics. This seems like a one-off joke, but ends up leading to one of the most memorable, if divisive, moments in the entire movie, for better or worse. A second before Zephyr shoots serial killer Tucker dead with a spear gun in the finale, she says, "Ooby Dooby, motherfucker." Now, in fairness, Dangerous Animals isn't taking itself particularly seriously and fully embraces its schlocky B-movie nature throughout. Yet, it's still such a bizarrely jarring and out-of-nowhere line that it was always going to make a large portion of the audience cringe. It is funny though. Number 2. Sir Jimmy Crystal, 28 years later. It's no exaggeration to say that not a single solitary soul saw the end of 28 years later coming. In the final minutes of the movie, young Spike returns to the mainland, where he's attacked by a fleet of the infected. After shooting one with an arrow, he's met by a blonde-haired man decked out in a tracksuit and bling, who introduces Spike to his gang of similarly attired goons. Said goons then team up to flip around and kill the assembled infected with various bladed weapons. Because this isn't insane enough, it's also scored to a heavy metal cover of the Teletubbies theme before the gang leader introduces himself to Spike as Jimmy, revealing him to be the very same younger Jimmy glimpsed in the film's prologue. That is without even getting into the fact that Jimmy and his crew are clearly styled after disgraced British TV presenter Jimmy Savile, the implications of which are nauseating and presumably will be explored in the soon-to-release sequel, 28 Years, The Bone Temple. Number 1. Gladys gets ripped apart. Weapons. Though it was hardly a surprise that Zach Cregger's mesmerising weapons ended with the death of the villainous witch Gladys, did anyone expect it to happen quite like this? In the climax, Alex, the only child from Justine's class not to disappear, manages to replicate Gladys's spell with a strand of hair from her wig. This, in turn, causes his enchanted classmates to emerge from the basement in the house and doggedly pursue Gladys, who runs through the neighbourhood while being tirelessly chased by the kids. Gladys is eventually caught and promptly ripped apart by the children, killing her and breaking the spell. Needless to say, having the villain be literally torn to shreds by a group of weaponized, enchanted children probably isn't how anyone watching expected this to go. In a refreshing twist, though, killing Gladys doesn't instantly resolve everything. The kids are free from the spell, but some are still catatonic, and it remains to be seen if all of them will ever return to normal.